Hey everyone, it's Ben with another GE Frontload video. In this video, I want to show you how to diagnose and replace the damper control system in the unit. It's what keeps the unit ultra fresh. Sometimes you can have some issues with this that will cause your unit not to properly work. If the vent system or the damper system is not working, then the unit will just not start when you turn it on and press the start button. It will turn on, maybe even it'll get slightly into the mode, but then it stops. I have a lot of other videos on other fixes for this, but specifically we'll deal with that damper today. So let's get this unit apart and check and test the damping system.
Tools that you're going to need in the video are as follows: a Phillips head screwdriver and a multimeter with specialty thin leads. These thin leads are going to allow you to check specific places on the board. I'm going to have a link to a few places that you can get them from that will be in the description. Finally, when you take off the front door boot gasket, you're going to need something to reattach it, and the TSE one does the best job out of all of them for the GE washer. It's not cheap, but I highly recommend it, although I do have a video of doing this with a wrench and cable ties too. Before we replace the damper, we need to make sure that it's what's actually causing the problem by checking error codes. I will link you to the YouTube video where I do all the troubleshooting, but to make this step quick in this video, press and hold the start/pause button for 8 seconds, then tap the button once the numbers display and cycle through all those codes that are available. If you see any of these numbers at the bottom of the screen, the damper needs tested and possibly replaced. To see how to test the damper, you can watch that same video how to go to code 24 and figure out how to cycle it. This video assumes that you've done all this and there is a problem somewhere in the system that needs resolved. The first thing we want to do is remove the detergent dispenser. To do that, pull it out as far as it can go forward without pulling it too hard. Then press the button at the rear of the dispenser and then pull it again to fully remove it. Afterwards, use a Phillips head screwdriver to remove the 5 screws from the housing that were hidden behind the dispenser we just took out. Note the style of screw, as the ones in the middle are different from those at the top and bottom on both sides. Once the screws have been removed, you can lift up on the left side of the interface panel where the screws were removed. Sometimes this can be a little difficult, but the key is that the interface will pivot up on the side about 20 degrees. Then you can push it to the right and then pull away. Know that the board will be somewhat held in place by a wire harness and cable ties, so there is a limited range of motion on this board at this point. Next, you want to remove the 3 screws that hold the lid or the top of the washer in place as you see here with a Phillips head screwdriver. Once you have all 3 screws removed, you'll want to pull the washer top towards you and then lift up, removing the lid of the machine, exposing many components. If you wanted to get more room to maneuver the interface, these 3 wire harness clips would need pressed from the inside out and may be optional to what you're doing. At this stage, we want to access the board to test it from the damper system to see if the damper is the problem or if it is the board instead. There are 3 screws on the top of the main board, 1 on the plastic, then 2 on the metal cover. Once you have the screws from the metal cover removed, you can move the top of the cover by sliding it towards the front. Then there will be 1 final screw underneath. To give yourself more room to access the board, you can move the wire trunks away from the board on the various harnesses. This could help assist you viewing and testing the board in just a minute. Make sure that the unit is off. We're wanting to test some specific characteristics of the damper system. The damper control wire is the blue harness in the middle of the machine with 3 wires on it. Press the tab and remove it. I had to remove the gray harness for easier access first, but that could be different on your system. Next, take a multimeter with the very thin leads and set your meter to ohms resistance. If it is not auto-ranging, it needs to be between 2K and 20K ohms. Press the leads into the middle and left, then middle and right wires of the harness. Sometimes this is easier to do from the front of the harness and other times from behind. It's going to vary based on the leads that you use. If the damper system from this wire is in good working order, the meter should get around 4.2K ohms of resistance on both multimeter tests. 4.2 from the middle to left, and then 4.2 from the middle to right. This checks the damper motor opening and closing from the board to the damping system. Now, if you got OL where the meter shows open, either the motor is shot or there is a wire that is disconnected, damaged, or loose between here and the damper itself. If the number was a lot higher or a lot lower than 4.2K ohms, then the damper is definitely bad and needs replaced. If you got 4.2K ohms and you're having damper related issues, it could be that the board is damaged and needs replaced. And you would want to check with your multimeter if you're getting voltage out from the wires when you cycle the damper. As a reminder, I'm going to have a link to the main board, the testing leads, and the damper in the description. There are 2 styles of main boards based on this model, but there's only one style damper that I'm aware of, and if you use the links in the description, it's going to help support the channel if you buy anything. Open the door of the unit and take a small screwdriver or dental pick and pull the door boot spring up and out of its housing. This will release the outer gasket. Go ahead and roll it up from the top and bottom of the gasket away from the system. To access the damper itself, you need to remove these 3 screws. This will detach the damper assembly itself. Once you have the screws out, press the assembly rearward and then down to detach the damping system from the front of the bulkhead assembly. These next steps are actually optional. You can service the damper potentially without removing the front bulkhead off, but for camera and investigative purposes, I'm going to do that so you can have an easier time seeing what's happening. I have a video for the next few steps in depth, but as a quick tour, you take 3 screws off the bottom of the unit. You may or may not need to tilt the machine to do this. Use the Phillips head screwdriver and remove the 2 screws on the plastic facade of the door lock. Once removed, pull the facade away. Then there are going to be 1 or potentially 2 screws that hold the door lock itself in place, but this one only has 1 at the top. You want to remove the screw, and then with the screw out, lift the door lock up and then press it rearward so it doesn't get caught when we go to remove the bulkhead itself. Next, uninstall the 7 screws at the top of the bulkhead. Some of these were so rusted from the dispenser being damaged, I had to remove them in a very difficult way, but you can kind of see where these 7 should go at the top. With the screws and door lock removed, we can begin to remove the front of the unit. Open the door and then lift up on the door and then start slowly pivoting it away from the washing machine. But on the left side, there's going to be a wire harness that you need to remove. You need to unclip this wire harness before you remove the front of the washing machine. Here's another angle of that harness from an older video for that explanation. With the door off, here's the damper assembly. The damper is in the middle, and then the harness and its attachment point is to the right that we will discuss in a moment. To remove the damper from the door gasket, you'd use a Phillips head screwdriver to unscrew the screw from the retaining bracket, then use a hook or screwdriver to split the assembly apart. Then you have the screw for the damper harness that holds it into the bulkhead. If you didn't take the door off, you theoretically could just remove this screw beside the wire tie holder and then push the harness off to the left and then out of the way from the bulkhead. None of these are easily seen with the door on though, and you'd have to almost do it by feeling. Here's the wire assembly of the damper. We have ample room to deal with this with the door off, but if you had the door on, this would entirely be by feeling at this point in which to work. You need to remove the wire tie that is attached to the harness. Once you have the wire tie cut, you can then remove the wires from the harness. Although it's brighter than I hoped, hopefully you see the 2 small clips here that hold both harnesses in. These need pressed in to remove the harness from the holder, then the harness can be unclipped and split to remove the damper. As a note, the blue connector's for the damper and the white one is for the lighting system. I removed both of these just for reference to show you how to do it. You can remove the door light if that were a concern, or of course the damper. It will simply pull off and away from the rubber of the blue gasket system. I don't need a new damper on this unit, but it's somewhat common for these to fail and need replaced. But one potential cause that could have been the cause of this whole issue is the harness system that we looked at in the last scene getting unhooked or being damaged. To install the new damper, simply affix it between the parts of the door gasket. It doesn't need to sit flush with this seal entirely. There are 3 small vertical ledges that it kind of sits on, but there will be a small gap from the top of the damper assembly and the gasket as you see here. Then once this is affixed, you want to install the metal retainer. You'll see that it wraps around and there's a small ledge that it positions on in the video. Press the bracket in and make sure that it locks the front piece to the rear piece like you see here. It should snap, then reinstall that screw that we took out earlier like you see here. Then go ahead and reinstall the 2 harnesses to the connector. Theoretically, again, you only need to deal with the blue one, but I unhooked the white one as well. Remember, there are 2 small fingers that lock the harnesses into the white harness holder. We did cut that cable tie off that held the harness wires in place, so you need to make sure to reinstall a wire tie to the assembly and make sure that the wires are inside the harness assembly like you see here. Then we can start reassembling the washing machine if you took the front off. If not, you can kind of skip ahead a little bit. You would align the door and slowly work it back into place. Make sure you install that wire harness on the left side of the door like you see. Then slide that door onto the washer chassis. There are 4 pegs that it gets affixed to. Then install any screws to the top of the bulkhead, and then tilt the unit and install the 3 screws at the bottom. Once you have that done, make sure the damper is seated into place at the top of the bulkhead before we reinstall the entire gasket system. Reattach the 3 screws once the damper is locked in place so it doesn't wiggle out when we deal with the gasket. Roll the gasket lip onto the washer door. This could be a little bit sharp, so make sure to wear gloves as needed. Now we have the task of reinstalling the gasket spring, and this is somewhat difficult. If you don't have that TSE1 removal tool that we talked about at the beginning, I do have a video showing how to use cable ties and a wrench. However, the tool makes it quite easy. You're going to attach the pins of the device onto the spring, then turn the knurled knob to expand the tool and the spring while slowly leading the wire around the lip of the door gasket. This is a very slow process for a GE because of how wide the spring is. I'm trying to be very careful on camera. This whole process took about 4 minutes to get the spring on the gasket. You can use a small hook, tool, or screwdriver to press the wire into the lip once the spring is compressed, then slowly back out the knob and let the wire seat onto the gasket. Shut the door, and the process is just about done. Make sure to install the door lock back into place by putting it on the latch and installing the screw that locks the door lock into place. Then use the 2 screws to install the facade to the door. Go ahead and shut the door to the unit, and the process is just about done. The next steps essentially are going to be to reinstall the top lid of the washing machine, assuming you tested the control board, then the interface to the bulkhead. Note that the interface will attach on the right side of the control system, first onto a larger screw, then it's going to pivot down on the left side into place and then lock in. I do have other videos of reinstallation on my channel from different angles that I think are better than I did in this one, but they're different color GEs. This is the 3rd GE front load washer I've worked on in a different color for all the problems the machine has. Then install the 5 screws to the dispenser housing and the interface. Note that the 2 screws in the middle are more of a coarse thread than the 3 outlying ones. The dispenser box may need to be held in towards the front while you install the 2 middle ones. Then the 3 outer ones secure the interface to the washer bulkhead for reference. Then reinstall the dispenser box, and this job should be done. You should have a new damper system or a mainboard, depending on what's happened. As a reminder, I do have the links to the mainboard if that was what was bad, the multimeter and testing leads, and then finally the damping system in the description. There are 2 styles of mainboards based on this model, but as far as I know, there's only 1 damper part number that's available for all these GE front load washing machines. And if you use the links that I have in the description, it helps support the channel. Have a great day.